Four essential elements of photography coming up. Hi, it's Peter here, and let's get right into the business. I had a small workshop for a client last week, or well, a couple of weeks ago anyways, and we were talking about the elements of photographs, or what are the most important elements in photography. The workshop was all about them being able to make better photographs for their social media and for their blogs. And of course, it would be better if they just hired me to do the photography for that, but that's not the case. When you're doing social media, it's the moment that's important, and teaching them to make better photographs for that, so that they get more traction, more people clicking their blogs and all that. The things that I was talking about was light, composition, background, and storytelling. Let's talk about those. And what they did is that they used their mobile phones. Of course, first you start thinking about how to teach photography with their mobile phones, because you cannot really use ISO, aperture, and shutter speed in its full use compared to a real camera. But then I actually realized when I was making the material that it's so much easier to teach the essence of photography without going into the technical details, because then you can concentrate on the real big things in photography. Like I said, light, composition, storytelling, and the background. And I think this is the big thing that we should think more about, is the light and all that stuff, and composition, and not concentrate too much on the technical stuff, because that will take us away from storytelling and all that. And why I'm making this video is because I wanted to share the stuff that I talked with them. And let's start with the light. Yeah, light. Why is light so important? Well, first of all, we need light to make a photograph. Without light, there is no photographs. And light is really important when we're making the mood of the photograph. The light is totally different during the morning, then midday, and in the afternoon, and nighttime, or late in the evening. And that's the most important thing to understand that. So if you have a possibility to photograph when the light is at its best to make the story of your image, then do that. If it's the morning light, daylight, or nighttime, or in the evening, because it's totally different. When the sun is rising, it comes from a very low angle, and usually the light is really golden. And then during the day, it's really high up, and everything is really harsh, or the shadows are really harsh. And that could be the thing to make the story. But to be honest, the best time to photograph is an overcast weather with a really thin layer of clouds between you, or between the subject and the sun. Then the light is at its best, because it's soft and nice, and there's still shadows. And then in the evening, again, light shines from the very low angle, and it's a different color, and the shadows look totally different. And that varies also if you have different seasons in your country. Like here in Finland, we have spring, which is just around the corner. Then we have summer, when the light is a lot harsher. But then, yet again, we do have a lot of light during the nighttime, because in some parts of especially in the north, the sun doesn't set at all. So you have daylight all the time, or daylight, but you know what I mean. And then we have fall and the winter, which is, of course, totally different type of lighting. And that's kind of a great thing, even though I'm more of a spring and summer person. But still, I think it's a gift that we have different types of lights in the different seasons. And then shadows are really important, because without the shadows, everything would be flat, like it is quite flat right now, because there is thick layer of clouds in front of the sun. That's why I'm here, so that I would have some shadow from the darker part, because there's a big tree here, and then the light comes from that. There is a slight difference in contrast, or different amount of light. So hopefully there is slight shadow here, because that will make the place or the image and the video in this case slightly more three-dimensional. Because if we want to have a shape in an object, we need the shadow to tell us that there's a shape. That's how it works. And there is a direction of the light, like on this one. I have a light coming from that direction and some shadows on this side. So always remember to look at the character of the light and the direction of the light and look for the shadows. And then there's the third thing, that's the color temperature, which is also an important thing, because you can make an image look like it was taken in nighttime, making it more blue, and then making it more yellow, it's more of an afternoon light. And that can be faked with color temperature slider. It's not perfect, but you can make it look like the image was taken during the nighttime when making it blue. So play around with that if you are editing images. And also, what's important, photograph when it is the best time that is kind of like in conjunction with the story of the image, with the feeling of the image. And let's next talk about composition. Composition. The reason that we need to make a good composition in our images is that we want to put the subject as a hero in the image. And composition is the right way to do it, or the way to do it. How you do it is another question, and that's the hardest part of about all, because we all have these different rules, golden ratio, rule of thirds, symmetry, whatnot. And usually if you make an image with those, or following those rules, the image is pretty boring. So an image that has something wrong with the composition is usually more interesting, because then the small thing that it is a bit off makes you look at the image a lot longer, and that will make you think a bit more about the image, because you want to kind of like what's bothering is a thing that your eye will stick into the image. You will just watch it, and that's something that at least I do a lot. If I see an image that is or has a slightly off the composition, I mean, it's more interesting than the image that it's done by the book. I don't know if that made any sense, but you need to have some distracting elements that break the rules to make the image interesting. I think that's maybe a better way to say it. And to learn about composition, just photograph and look at photographs and see why you like something or why this image is interesting. Usually it has a lot to do with the composition. And I have a video about that, and you can watch it from there if you want to learn more about composition. But let's get to the next one, which might be a bit surprising. Background. Background. This might be a surprise for you. Why background is so important? Well, first of all, having a neutral and not too much attention-grabbing background makes your subject to be the hero of the image. It's the same thing with composition. It's part of that. So you make the image look more calm and more concentrated on the subject. But of course, if you want to have a busy background to tell a story with something that, okay, this place is really busy, you might have a really busy background. But that's a choice that you made, and it was part of the story. When you're looking at the subject and the background, always check out what's behind the subject, so that there are no unintentional things sticking out of the head or something like that. So try to place the subject in a fairly calm background, so that the calm is behind my head, for example. I'm not sure if it is, because I'm filming myself, so I can't really make the perfect composition. And usually the background is something that might distract us, because there is something that we did not see when we photographed, because we were so concentrated on the subject itself. But don't underestimate the importance of the background, and make that part of your storytelling, which we will talk about next. Yes, storytelling is the thing that we all want to have in our photographs, or stories in our photographs. And all the things that I've said need to lead to the same story that you want to tell. So everything, the light, the composition, the background has to have a joint goal that the story is the one that you want to tell us. Of course, we all have different experiences in life. We all have lived a different life. We've done different things. The story in your image might be different to all of us. I have some kind of an idea when I make a photograph that, okay, I want to tell this stuff, and you might see it to be something else, and that's totally fine. And usually if we tell too much, so that I trying to tell how I think too much and influence you that you need to think the same way, I think that's wrong. What we need to do is to make photographs that tell stories, and then everybody can interpret them how they want it. If that interpretation is the same as I intended it to be, yeah, that's fine. If it's not, it's equally fine. If we tell the story so that there are no questions, the photograph answers all the questions that we have, it's probably a pretty boring image. A lot more interesting image is an image that doesn't tell you everything. You hide something. It's an odd situation that you don't tell everything. People start thinking about it. It's kind of like the same thing as a distracting element in a composition. You leave something in there that's not supposed to be there if we follow the rules. It's about the same thing. It starts to raise some questions. What's going on, and that makes an image interesting. And here you can watch some videos about light and shadow and composition. But hey, thanks for watching, and bye for now.